Today's episode of Passionate Talk is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audio download and 30-day free trial at books.passionatetalk.com. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. To start your free trial, visit books.passionatetalk.com. Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Passionate Talk. I am your host, Gary Karp, and this is episode number 22. Today's conversation is going to be with Tope Idowu. Tope is the founder of Child Spark Initiative. Child Spark Initiative is a nonprofit organization dedicated to inspiring and empowering children around the world through art and music. Tope is also a writer, producer, actor, director, and as I found out in this conversation, a pretty accomplished pianist. We're going to talk a little bit about his favorite composers, about his life growing up in Nigeria, his schooling in Nigeria, and the little bit of a challenge he had on deciding which track to take, science or art. Now, I just want to let you know that Tope was gracious enough to call us from the set. He is currently working on a video with a dozen to a dozen and a half children between the ages of 6 and 12. So you're going to hear some noise in this conversation. There is the production noise going on in the background. There are the kids that are, well, they're just being kids. So the production level and the sound quality may be a little off, and I do apologize about that right up front. Right now, I want you to sit back, relax, grab a cup of coffee, make yourself some tea, and get ready to listen to my conversation with Tope. What was the deal that you forgot about the 3 o'clock things? What were you doing? I mean, come on, guy.
I'm totally, I'm totally swamped, with what I'm doing.
Well, being busy is a good thing. What were you busy with? What were you doing?
Well, I was working on a small video for some kids, and I'm actually eyeing them to be part of Child Spark, so I needed to extend myself a little bit for them.
I definitely can get that. The one thing I do know about you, Tope, is you love children. You really love and live to help the kids.
I do.
In the 2 years, I think, that we've known each other, that's been your singular drive on everything that you do.
Yeah.
How did that become a passion of yours? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, I think I'm one of those people who had a lot of fun in childhood, and there were things that I had hoped I could experience as a kid that I just never was able to experience because of some of the difficulties of growing up and all that. But what the television and film did to me was it opened my eyes at a very early age, and my dad spoiled me with all these Ladybird series, stories for children and all that. So I've always been fascinated about childhood, about fairy tales and all those type of stories.
So what was your favorite story growing up? What was your favorite series?
It's actually Cinderella.
Really? Now, were you Prince Charming, or were you Cinderella looking for the slipper?
Please, I'm Prince Charming. I'm
checking.
always Prince Charming, always. So it was that part of my life that was absolutely magical. And growing up, I also realized that a lot of things that are happening in this world right now got messed up at that age, at that stage. So if we're able to make it better for them, I think they will grow into better adults, so.
And this was what? This was in the 80s while you were growing up?
In the 70s.
Oh, wow, you're older than me. Okay, cool.
I was born in 69, so 70s, 80s, I would say I was more or less in my teenage years,
Okay, so I'm older than you. Thank you. I was born in 66.
Okay.
For
great.
a glimmer of hope, a glimmer of a moment, I really thought I was the younger one here in this friendship.
Yeah.
So what was it about the Cinderella story that spoke to you? We know it wasn't the fact you wanted to wear glass slippers.
No.
So what was it?
It was the the struggle she had with life and how she was able to overcome, and then the romance of it, the prince falling in love with her and searching the entire town to find the girl with the other half of the slipper. And of course, it was relatable for most of us because polygamy, it's also a major part of our lives as Africans when we're growing up. So if you don't have a father who had two wives, you probably have a grandfather who had two or three more wives. So we know all of that, and usually wives don't treat each other right. So it was a relatable story for most of us growing up at that time. And of course, you also have Gulliver Travels. You have all the other wonderful stories too that we grew up on.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to grow up in Nigeria at that time?
Well, at that time, it was fun, you know, to an extent because Nigeria still had, we were still kind of sane. The military boys have not really gotten so pervasive in their intervention, into politics. And what we had was such that we had parents who were civil servants who lived honest lives and who actually at the turn of by the turn of that decade, most of them were already impoverished because the naira was devalued and all that. But it was a period in time that things were really on the upbeat for us as a nation. There was so much hope in the 70s, but in the early 80s, the downward trend began.
So, is the downward trend, is that what gave you the idea and the passion and the desire to come to the United States and make your own claim and that American dream, quote unquote?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been part of growing up, looking at America, looking at Europe. It's always been exciting because there is no way you know one or two people who had traveled abroad and who have made a very significant impact, not only on their own personal life, but also on national life. So for every young person growing up, you always look at it like someday, even if you're not going to live abroad, at least you go study abroad. And some of our parents too were wealthy enough to send some of us abroad. So, that those are the types of things that inspired it. At that time, it was strictly for educational purposes, and because Nigeria was okay. I mean, it wasn't like people were leaving Nigeria to go live abroad. They just wanted to go get the education and come back home.
So, where did you go to study? Did you study in Nigeria? Did you come to the
Absolutely.
States?
I studied in Nigeria. Actually, the first 30 years of my life, I lived in a city called Ibadan. I mean, in that city, I had my elementary education, secondary education, and also tertiary education. So, I could say I'm a bona fide, a thoroughbred Ibadan man. But I mean, my father is from Abeokuta, but my mom is from Ibadan. So, yeah.
Now, I know that you are an artist, you are a director, you produce television and movies and videos as you were doing earlier, which is why we got this interview started a little bit late. We could hear the production team in the background a little bit of that, folks, so I do apologize
Yeah,
for the background noise. But Tope
I'm sorry
right
about
now,
that. And
to,
with
to,
children.
Tope is right now on set, and he has graciously taken time away from the production that he's doing now and working
Yeah,
with the kids
yeah,
to have this interview with us.
yes.
And how did you get into film?
I hope it's not getting too loud.
Well, kids are going to be kids, and we're going to deal with it.
Okay. Oh my. You know what? I came up here to hide away from them, but now they're all over here
They
now.
found you.
They found me. Yeah, you were asking about my. Sorry. I'm so sorry about this.
Well, we can take a little bit of a break, and I can
A
edit
break.
this out until the kids
Okay.
quiet
All
down.
right.
That's
All right.
cool.
Okay, I'll go down there and yeah. Let me find
Folks,
another.
Tope is at the moment finding a spot away from children. I am sure every parent in the world can appreciate what he is going through right now.
Okay, I think it's quiet out here. All right. So yeah, we can go on.
Okay, I think we found another quiet spot, so
Yeah.
let's just go until they start to play Pig and a Poke or Hide and Seek or Red Rover or whatever the game is and find
Yeah.
you again.
Yeah.
So we were talking about how you fell in love with film. You explained the fairy tales and Cinderella and all that stories, but how did that translate to you actually wanting to become part of the industry and start making movies and producing movies and writing stuff yourself?
Yeah. Actually, my very first influence, came through my mom, and because my mother was a teacher, she taught fine arts, and she also taught, she taught English for a while. And she's an artist. My mom could make a whole dress with a needle and thread, and
Wow.
whatever she can make. She at the point she was making her own dress. So one day she was writing some things on the cardboard that she was going to stick on the wall in our classroom. And I asked her, "What's this?" And she said, "Is dialogue. It's called dialogue." And I said, "What's it used for?" And she said, "Oh, that's how people write plays and films and all that." I said, "Wow, I like to write my own too." So she gave me a piece of paper and said, "Okay, go ahead and write what you want to write." And I remember writing my very first play at
And
the
how
age
old
of,
were you?
I think I was about 8 or 9.
So you wrote your first play at the age of 8 or 9. Was this
Absolutely.
something that you just put on in the living room, or did this actually get put on stage and produced?
No, it didn't get produced because my of course, despite the fact that my mom inspired it, they were vehemently against it because there was no way they didn't see a future in it for me. So
Okay, I just
she
want to take
became
a brief time out because there's a lesson to be learned in that, Toby, and I'm
yeah,
smiling because all I heard when I was growing up and I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to go into the arts from my mother and my father was you
yeah.
need something to fall back on. You
Aha,
can't make money at it.
she she
Go do
she
computers, go do
exactly.
business.
They wanted me to be a doctor.
Yep. And the one thing I want to get across to our listeners, folks, if you have
Yeah,
a dream, if you have a passion, you want to paint, you want to write, you want to make movies,
let's go
go
for it.
ahead and do it.
Let's do it.
Dive in the deep end of the
Let's do it.
pool because
Yeah,
you're going to wake up one morning when you're 50 or 52 or 60 or 65 and you're going to look back and say, gee, I wish I had done this.
I've done
So
that.
why
Yeah.
not do it now and see where the road takes you? So your parents were against you going into
Yeah,
the arts.
they were okay if I was gonna just write it and make some fun at it, or do whatever I want to do, but not like I was gonna pursue a career being a writer or being a filmmaker or being a storyteller. So it was really tough for me at that time, because as I transitioned, as I graduated and I went to secondary school, the passion became much stronger and I really wanted to do much more. And I was forced to stay in sciences because then in Nigeria you have to pick where you're gonna be after your third year in secondary school. You have to pick whether you be in the sciences or in the arts. And when my principal asked me, I said, "Okay, I'm gonna be in the arts." But she said, "Oh man, you can't be in the arts. You're a very good student. You should be in the sciences."
So only the bad students
So
got to be
you got it,
artists.
you got it. So, so I moved my locker to the art class, and the following morning, my mom was the first person to get to school. She said no, so they pushed me back to sciences. So I didn't have a choice. I had to follow through. So I went through sciences, and of course, I was the best student all through my secondary school days. I had some of the very best results in the entire state, but that's as a science student. So they wanted me to study medicine. I didn't study for my jam because we had this examination you had to take to get admitted into university. I decided to flunk it deliberately, but then my scores was able to get me into petroleum engineering, civil engineering, electrical engineering, geology.
So even though you decided to purposely not study and
Failed.
flunk this degree
Yes.
so you couldn't become a doctor and maybe you could transition to where the bad kids were, the poor kids were in the arts, they were
Yeah,
still good enough to get you into engineering.
absolutely.
Wow.
I still refused. I said, then I became very heady and I said, you know what? Even if I'm going to do anything in the sciences, I'm going to go into some that is related to film or television. And I decided to go to the Polytechnic to study electrical electronics. And after my first session, my first semester at the Polytechnic, they forced me again to say, you know what, you still have to go back. You have to go to university. You can't just go to Polytechnic. You are too intelligent to be in the Polytechnic. So I sat again for the exams, and this time around, they picked me for civil engineering. And I was literally forced, coerced to go there.
Now, were you coerced by the school system? Were you coerced by your
No, my
parents?
parents.
Was it
My
a
parents.
tag team
It's my
thing?
parents. It's my parents. So they forced me that I had to go on to university. So I went to a university called University Obafemi Awolowo University, one of the very best in Nigeria at that time. And I remember as a civil engineering student, I wasn't happy. I spent a whole semester, but every time I came back, I was walking back to my hostel. I would see these guys rehearsing. The school had an amphitheater, and all the drama students would be there dancing, rehearsing their lines and all that. And I would stay with them till late in the night. So, so one day I just woke up. I just said, "Look, I gotta continue with this. I have to go home. I don't want to do this." So I went to my mentor at that time, and I told him, "Look, I don't want to do this." And he was like, "Oh my God, so you didn't want to study civil engineering the first day?" I said, "Yes." So, but why would they do that? So because he's in the arts, and he was actually telling me that he would have wished his son studied theater arts, but his son didn't want to study theater arts. So he said, I shouldn't worry, that I should go home if I don't want to do it, that I should go do what I want to do. So I went back home and I was literally disowned. Nobody took care of me for about a year. I had to live by myself. They insisted that they were not going to do anything for me. I had to fend for myself. And I had to now I was a full science student. So you can imagine, and I have to go and take all the arts classes again. It was really tough. It was a really tough one, for me.
And
So
so now you're retaking the classes.
yeah.
I'm assuming, knowing you the way that I do, that you aced those classes.
Oh, absolutely. Because when I went into university, when I studied, and I passed. I mean, I didn't even have to do anything. I was the second best that got admitted for even for theater arts. So it was really a huge transition for me, and it was that year that I started learning to play the piano. I used my dad had all these music books he's bought in the 50s that he wasn't able to work on. I was the one that went to his library, took out all those, piano for tutor, all the scores of Handel, of Haydn, Handel, Beethoven, Mozart. So
Oh,
I
so
started.
you learned classical piano.
Oh, of course, I did classical piano. Yeah,
So
that's what I.
who is your favorite classical composer for
Beethoven,
piano? Be-
Beethoven,
I have to agree with you on that.
Beethoven,
I have a love-hate relationship with Beethoven because his
Beethoven.
symphonies are a little bit too bombastic for me,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
absolutely love his piano
I love.
concertos. They are
Yeah,
so
they're
beautiful.
so beautiful. I love Beethoven so much. Then Mozart. Those two, they're my
I
absolute.
will agree with that.
Yeah, those are my absolute favorite. So then was that during that time too, I started dancing ballet. You know, because there was this youth group out of Ibadan. There used to be the British Council Library back in the day, but the program ended, so the center was transferred to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and they had these Brazilians who came in to teach us ballet and all that. So it was a year that was it was the huge turning point in my life. I think I was about 18 years old, 17, 18 years old, and it was really It was a profound time that I really, really stretched myself. And that was when I just told myself, like, you know what, there's no going back. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life, you know?
And so you get out of college with this degree,
Oh, yeah.
and then how do you pursue it? I know we've spoke a little bit about, I think it was one of the television productions that you first did in Nigeria, a show called Shallow Waters. So how did that come about?
Yeah, it wasn't even that wasn't even the first one. I think what happened was that before in my second year or third year, some a producer in Nigeria by named Tadio Gidon he studied in the States. He returned home and he was going to make this film called Hostages. He actually first titled it Sweet Hostage, and he was looking for a teenager to play the lead, and they went to almost all the universities in Nigeria that offered theater and dramatic arts, and I ended up winning the role. So that gave me a professional experience even whilst I was in school as a student. But when I left in '92, um, after my service, got back to Ibadan and I got involved with this non-profit called Association for Reproductive and Family Health, and they were looking for someone to handle the youth program. They were looking for a dramatist, and I just walked into it, and I volunteered for them for about 6 months to prove that I could do it. And after 6 months, about 8 or 9 months after, one foundation in the state called Population Action International funded the program for me. So I was using drama, music, and dance.
So you really bet on yourself at that point by saying, "Hey, listen, I'll work for you for 6 months just to prove myself," and then
Absolutely.
and all
Yeah.
these and everything happened after that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. In fact, it was the one decision I took that turned my life completely around, because it was very difficult. I was broke, completely broke. So many times I allowed to walk like 3 or 4 kilometers to and fro, you know, to be able to make it.
And that's another great lesson for people out there, including myself, which is the only person you can depend upon, the only person you can bet on is yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? Because of what happened, because of my story, everybody said I was gonna fail. Everybody. I had nobody to encourage me. Not one person. You know, we make the world go round. We set the agenda. So yeah,
Absolutely. The comedians, artists of all types
yeah,
are really the ones that are tasked with, in my opinion, holding up a mirror to society
absolutely,
and
absolutely.
saying, this is who we are.
Yes,
This is the good parts of us. This
and
is the
yeah,
bad parts of us.
and you see, it's also a test for any society. Check any society that is progressive. Think, check how they handle their comedians or their art or their art sector. You know, you cannot. It's almost like you cannot. You have no. I always tell people, science is the tool. You understand? Art
Hmm.
art is the vision. Art is what points the direction you're going. Without the vision, your tool is useless. And that's why most of what we have in Africa today is, I mean, what
And I love that phrase, science is the tool, art is the vision. And
exactly.
really they work together
They work
because a
together.
tool without a vision has nothing to
Has
do, and a
nothing.
vision without tools
I
will
mean,
never be built and realized.
no, So I mean, our own problem had always been we're focusing so much on the sciences, on the tools, we're leaving out the vision. So even when, and then what do we call junk art? Junk art is art without vision,
Hmm.
because you're just spewing it out, without thinking through, But when you look at successful society, all through human history, check their art. Art is what points direction.
That was a great conversation we had with Tope. I think the best truth nugget that he laid on us was that science is a tool and art is the vision. You need both. You need the vision of art, the vision of creativity, that dream that you want to have. But you also need to have the tools, whatever those tools are, in order to create the reality and manifest it and bring value into this world. Listening to Tope speak about his life in Nigeria and his schooling in Nigeria and what he needed to go through in order to pursue that dream of being an artist when everybody wanted him to be a scientist or an engineer, including his parents and his mother, who encouraged him to be that artist, to write. That I found was really fascinating. But right now, that's all the time we have for Passionate Talk today. So until we meet again on Wednesday, follow your dreams and passions and manifest the life that you choose.